Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are diving into a topic that can make any parent's stomach drop. That call from the principal's office. We're going to break down the entire school discipline process and, most importantly, empower you with a clear understanding of your child's rights.
You know, when that phone rings, it can leave you feeling worried, confused, maybe even a little angry. If that's you, trust me, you are not alone. The goal here is to help you shift from feeling overwhelmed to feeling prepared. And that all starts with understanding how the system actually works.
So, first things first, let's reframe how we think about this. This quote is a total game changer. The purpose of school discipline isn't just about punishment. It's about making sure school is a safe place where every single kid can learn. Once you approach it from that angle, your talks with the school can become so much more productive.
Okay, so how do we get from that confusing phone call to a confident plan? Here's our roadmap. We're going to start with the why behind the rules, then look at how they're actually applied. We'll cover your child's basic rights, including some really important protections for students with disabilities. And then we'll wrap it all up with a concrete action plan you can use.
Right, let's start at the very beginning. Why do schools even have these super detailed, sometimes complicated discipline policies? What's the real point of it all?
Well, it really boils down to two main things. First, keeping the school environment safe for everyone. And second, protecting the actual time teachers have to teach. Pretty much every rule and every consequence should tie back to one of these two big goals. So, if the big goals are safety and learning, how do schools enforce the rules? They don't just jump to the most extreme consequence, or at least they shouldn't. There's a process, and you need to know what it is. The best way to think about it is like a ladder. The school's response is supposed to match the behavior. So a small misstep gets a small response, right? Maybe just a verbal warning from the teacher. But if the behavior keeps happening, or if it's more serious, the school starts to climb that ladder to things like detention, an office referral, or even suspension. Now, as you go through this, you're going to hear a lot of jargon and acronyms. Let's quickly translate the big ones. Detention, that's pretty simple, just extra time at school. In-school suspension, or ISS, means your child is out of their normal class but still at school in a supervised room. Then there's out-of-school suspension, or OSS, which is the most serious. It means they can't be on campus at all for a set amount of time.
Okay, this next part is something every single parent absolutely needs to understand. When your kid walks into that school building, they do not leave their constitutional rights at the door. They are protected by a really important legal idea called due process.
So what does due process actually mean in a school? Well, before a major consequence, like a suspension happens, the school has to do two basic things. First, they have to tell your child exactly what they're being accused of, no vague stuff. And second, they have to give your child a chance to explain their side of the story. Now, this isn't a full-blown court trial, but it is a fundamental right that protects against unfair punishment.
Now, for parents whose children have an individualized education program, an IEP, listen up. There's a powerful extra layer of legal protection that you have. It comes from a federal law called the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, or IDEA, and it is a game changer. When it comes to discipline and IDE, there is one number you absolutely have to remember: 10. 10 days. If your child is removed from their classroom for disciplinary reasons for more than 10 school days in one school year, and that can be 10 days all at once or 10 days added up over time, a whole special set of rules gets triggered. So, once you hit that 10-day mark, the school is legally required to hold a meeting called a Manifestation Determination Review, or MDR. I know, it's a mouthful. But its purpose is actually pretty straightforward. The team, and you are part of that team, has to figure out one key thing. Was this behavior caused by or directly related to your child's disability?
The answer to that question sends things down two very different paths. If the team decides, yes, the behavior was a manifestation of the disability, then the conversation about punishment has to stop. The focus has to shift to fixing the problem, to changing the IEP and adding supports. But if the team decides no, it was not a manifestation, then the school can move forward with the same disciplinary process it would for any other student.
Okay, so we've covered the why, the how, and the rights. Now, let's make this real. What do you actually do with all this information when you get that call from the school? Let's build your action plan.
First off, it's really important to know who should be handling this. The vast majority of issues are handled by the school itself, based on its own student code of conduct. Law enforcement should only be involved for very serious criminal-level stuff. We're talking weapons, credible threats, that kind of thing. Knowing that difference can help keep things in perspective. To be a good advocate for your child, you have to work with facts, not just emotions. That's why your first move should always be to formally request, and I mean put it in an email, all the key documents. You want the official incident report, any statements from witnesses, and the exact code of conduct rule your child supposedly broke. This paperwork is the foundation for having a productive, fact-based conversation.
All right, before we finish up, I have to make one thing absolutely 100% clear. Think of this explainer as a great starting point, but please know it's not the final word.
See, while the general ideas we've talked about, like progressive discipline and due process, are pretty common everywhere, the specific details can, and often do, change depending on where you live. State laws are different, local school board policies are different. What's true in one town might not be true in the town right next door.
And this brings us to your most important takeaway. Your school district's official student handbook, that is your rulebook. That's the document that matters for your child's specific situation. So use this as your guide, but ground every single conversation you have in your local, specific policies.
Look, when you understand the rules, the rights, and the real reasons behind school discipline, you can change the entire dynamic. You can turn a moment of crisis into a chance to collaborate. You can make sure your child is treated fairly, and you can work with the school to keep the focus exactly where it should be, on your child's education, their well-being, and their future.